Record. Okay, it's recording. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. My name's Julie Castro Cardenas. And if we can all introduce ourselves really quick.
I'm Katie Gordon.
Jennifer Kerwin.
Daniel Straub.
Jessica Estabrook.
Alrighty, guys. So today we're going to go through our research statement and questions, and spend a little time, hopefully untangle any concerns and clarify things for each other. And I'll go ahead and start. And I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I can get to the right screen quickly.
Are you staying on the same subject that you talked about before?
Alrighty, so I can get to the Zoom.
Are you, Julie, are you doing the same topic that you were talking about before?
Oh yeah, cannabis and
Yeah.
Police officers. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, and through my annotated bibliography, I was able to find some really good information.
Good.
Interesting, very interesting. So here's my question. And if you guys can help pick and probe through it, that'd be great. So based on my research and employment experience, police recruitment has become very challenging due to several reasons. One being the potential candidates are being disqualified for positive marijuana tests or for even admitting to being involved with the use of marijuana. Further, in an effort to improve police recruitment, my research questions would find out if communities would be amenable to allowing police officer candidates to participate in recreational marijuana and identify the acceptance of omitting the requirement to pass a marijuana drug test. So this was the question that I had originally. It's changed a little bit since then because of the research that I've done. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but
That's good. That means you know more.
I fine-tuned it.
Yeah.
So my stance with this research is to be transformative. I basically want to help bring information to the forefront of authorities and politicians and chiefs of police to basically say it's okay, marijuana's okay, it's fine. As long as you have parameters, right? Same as prescription medication or alcohol or cigarettes, like you have parameters. And so some of the questions that I would ask would be through an electronic survey. And it would be, you engage, are you male, female, your ethnicity? Do you engage in recreational activities that involve marijuana? Have you engaged in the past? How long have you what have you done it in the last 3, 4, 5 years or whatever? And then start asking them the true nuts and bolts questions about how they feel, or how they would feel if police officers were allowed to get hired, even if they were involved with marijuana activities. So based on the results that I get, I would present that information to chiefs of police or politicians and so on and so forth. So that's what I have so far.
How would you, so you said you do a survey online. Would you email people or put up signs for a website, or how would you get the community
to respond?
Yeah.
My thought is that I would basically ask for permission from the chief, send it out to the entire police station. I'm going to try to get back onto the screen so we can see each other. Stop sharing. There we go.
I have a question. Are the research questions supposed to be questions that lead your research, or are they questions that you would want to ask in your research? Because I wrote mine as questions that would lead my research topic.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
So Katie, I'll actually jump in on that because I was thinking the same thing. So what Katie's saying is that, so like the questions that you provided would be like part of the survey that you're providing to the police officers, correct?
Yes.
Right. And then, so what I think Katie's saying is that, so like with the idea of like a research question itself, it's like, what are you trying to find out? What is the question you're trying to answer through this whole research?
Mhm.
Right. So like
The-
if you like scroll down to like, just mine briefly, like if you guys look back at mine, the restorative justice, I talked about like, what is the effectiveness of restorative justice in a secondary school setting, right? So it's not like something I would ask a kid, right? That question, but I would be trying to find it out through my research, through my study. I'd be trying to look to answer it and try to prove my hypothesis or my null hypothesis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I see.
So like your questions are really good as to be used as the survey to obtain your data. But as the research question itself, it would probably be more along the lines of like, what is the, like, how does officers who have used marijuana in the past or, you know, when off duty, how does that affect their effectiveness as a police officer? How does it affect their decision making? Like those would be like more of your research questions per se. Does that make sense?
Or
Okay,
what
I get it.
view of it.
Thank you, Daniel.
Feel about, broader.
I think one of
Okay.
the questions though, can you hear me?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Clearly.
I think one of the, I'm like, one of your questions, do you support hiring police officers that have positive marijuana test results? I think that could be transformed into a research question.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
tweak it to make it,
Mhm.
yeah, because that's kind of what you're trying to find out.
Yeah, my goal is to figure out, like, can I get support? Does the community in general feel like, marijuana is not a big deal? It's fine if cops have been involved with marijuana last month or 2 years ago. Whatever the policy is I'm indifferent, is I want to figure out, does the community see like we're past being anti-marijuana and it's okay for police officers to get hired or to at least not be disqualified? Because right now they're disqualified off the bat.
Yeah,
If-
that would be like your research question, like one of your research questions, like how does the community feel about recreational use of marijuana in their city's police officers? Like that would,
Yeah.
that's what you're trying to find out, you know?
Right.
It leads your research.
Thank you.
And then you
It's
could do,
very more specific. Okay.
and then you could do some questions that based off that of like, if you wanted to with that same idea of like, how does marijuana potentially impair their judgment? Like when it's not, like when they're not in that moment, does it impair, you know, those type of things. And that would still kind of relate to what you've been kind of trying to say. But just especially since we're trying to look at, like, I think he put 4 to 6 research questions that you're trying to generally answer. And also another idea is that as we're going through all of ours, if you have some ideas at the very end, we can always wrap back
Yeah.
around to yours. And then we can maybe like say, just help tie that out for you.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. That really helped me kind of zero in on the research questions
Mhm.
versus survey questions. So
Right.
thank you. Thank you. Cool. Well, that concludes mine unless there's more feedback. But like Daniel said, we can always come back.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think Jennifer, you're up. Yeah.
Close up. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Just talk loud.
Talk loud. Okay. So I basically took the purpose statement example that he gave so that I could figure out like how, like, what am I doing? And I plan on like refining it and not like keeping it like exactly like how he wrote it. But for now, that's how it is. So the purpose of this narrative or ethnographic, I'm not sure yet, study will be to better understand the experiences of families of children with terminal illness. More specifically, the aim of this project is to understand how participants' relationship to life and death evolves as a result of their experience, their medical care, and the passing of their loved one, and to highlight possible improvements for child life care and family support for the participants at the UCF Benioff Children's Hospital Child Life Program. That's also kind of like made up at this point because I don't know where I would be studying this or doing this research. But probably something in San Diego would be easier, like Rady Children's Hospital.
Yeah, Rady's is awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, at this stage in the research, I haven't really figured out how I'm generally going to be defining this. So, but my research questions, so what do patients and their families face day to day? What do they think about? What concerns them? How do they experience the medical community? How do they interact with their friends and families? What is their relationship with death? Does it change as death approaches? And does it change post-death? And how is that experienced? I know it's kind of like a downer.
Right.
Well,
Good research. It's a good topic.
yeah.
It's needed.
I think the fourth one is it seems a little separate from the other ones, because the other ones seem, I mean, it deals with it, but it just seems like it less personal, I suppose. Then the other ones seem really personal.
Like, how do they experience the medical community?
Yeah. Or like the day-to-day lives and like what they think about and what they feel about and interact with their friends and families and the relationship to death. It just, those seem like they all kind of like go together. And then the medical community seems like that would almost be like a separate study, you know what I mean? Where you would, how do they interact with doctors? Like, different things.
Yeah.
Jen, I have, go ahead, Jen.
Oh, well, I want to look at, I think, like, specific, because I do want to figure out if, what, if any, improvements could be made for like medical treatment or medical care for these families and support, like throughout that process and afterward, and what that looks like realistically for families, and if, is the medical community supporting these families in the best way that they can? I don't know.
I'm glad that you're saying that, because I had a question about, like, why do you want to know how families are experiencing terminal and dealing with terminal illness? Like, why? But you just answered it. I think that should be part of your, so that kind of sounds a little more constructionist, right? Because to get to like a observation of a community and then figuring out how to connect them with resources.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't really sure how to define my worldview, because it's kind of like picking and pulling from a couple different ones, and like,
Yeah.
and so I don't know.
I have a little cheat sheet thing. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Yeah.
I like cheat sheets.
I know. Oh, it's probably in a different, okay. Let me find it and then I'll come back to that.
One other thing I'd be careful, Jenny, with your research questions is that you have so many of them, because I think you had a list of 7 and then you had an 8th one that like to be finished writing. So if you think about trying to do a research study where you're answering all of those questions, if you think about how much is already composed in a research study where so many of them already are 60 pages or whatever, and that's for like 3 or 4, like if you looked at his example, right, his was I think almost like 40, and
His was long.
Right, and he only had a couple questions. So you think about like trying to answer all 8 of those questions, and if you did that effectively, what would that really look like? And like it would be almost split up into like 2 different research studies.
Right.
Like you could break them up into 2 different ways. So that's one thing I would just be careful about, because I feel like for research questions, and this is just, I'm just basing off, like I said, I've done this once before. This is my second time go around on writing one of these, that I think on my previous class, they let us max out at 3, like if that, because it's the whole, like they want quality. Like if you think about it, you're putting your name on it, right? You're saying you're really trying to represent what you truly know, and that you're going to be an expert and really answer that, right? And so for you to effectively answer that for 8 questions is going to like drain you.
Well, and also too, because like if I'm trying to answer too many questions, then I might not be able to get as in depth to what I'm really trying to figure out, and so it might just feel like you know, and I think
Right.
that's kind of like how I'm feeling right now, which is I'm like, I'm not really sure what the hell is going on.
Right. Yeah, no, I would just try to focus on one specific area that you're leaning towards. And that way also it ends up making the research part so much easier once you start like specifying. Like for example, when my last program, I was doing special ed teaching and it was like co-teaching, but then I went not from co-teaching, there's different subjects that you teach, right? So when I focused on math, when I looked up the research for the math, co-teaching, like all these specific items, and then making all my articles pop up because it's exactly what I needed. But if you're researching a general big idea, there's so many different ways that can be interpreted that it's going to end up making your research more difficult. So narrowing it a little more where you don't get yourself like completely pinned in a corner could make your life a little easier.
Cool.
Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And that's exactly why I'm still like struggling to like define what I'm trying to do, or like what am I studying?
Yeah.
You're on the right track. You have a lot of good research questions. I would just, like I said, just try to pick a few of your favorites that are similar to each other and really run with those.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to just pop this up just so we can have it as like a little refresher. I copied and pasted this onto my notes.
I was looking at that too. Yeah.
Just so that
That's all. Yeah.
I could like figure out what worldview. And I could have gone with the constructivism. I can't say that word. Anyway,
Constructivism.
I could have gone with constructivism. Thank you. But I didn't want to. I was like, no, I want my research to be like intentional, like like in a biased way. And is that bad?
No.
And that's why I picked transformative, because I think that there's value in just accepting what society accepts.
Oh yeah.
And just get out of the fear zone. Anyway, that's that.
Hold up.
Let's go back. You can all see our faces. All right. So I think that is there
Next.
anything else for Jenny? Great. Katie?
Okay, so I changed my idea from the previous one, and I'm focusing more on co-parenting in divorced or separated parents, and how that affects, like if they're more either cooperative or conflicted, like, cooperative, like they work together well, or conflicted, like they butt heads and they don't work together well, like how that affects preschool age children's behavior. And so I chose qualitative, and I don't know whether or not if it's constructivist or pragmatic, and I couldn't figure out if it was narrative or phenomenological. Anyway, so my purpose statement is: the purpose of this narrative or phenomenological, I don't know, study is to explore the effects that co-parenting styles have on preschool age children's behavior. More precisely, the objective of this inquiry is to better understand different co-parenting styles within divorced or separated parents, and how they may affect preschool children's behavior at home and at school. At this stage in the research, the opposing co-parenting styles can be defined as cooperative or stable, and conflictive. Cooperative co-parenting is defined as both parents working together in harmonious fashion to parent their children, and conflicted co-parenting is defined as high amounts of anger and distress, verbal abuse, and physical aggression between the parents. I tried to just kind of follow what his purpose statement was. My research questions are: how do the co-parenting styles of divorced or separated parents affect preschool children's behavior at home? And I defined the ages as 2 to 5, because that's where I work, that's the age range. How do the co-parenting styles of divorced or separated parents affect preschool children's behavior at school? What are the teachers' perceptions of children from conflicted and cooperative co-parenting families' behaviors? And what are the parents' perceptions of their own co-parenting abilities, and how do they perceive their children's behavior?
Wow. That'll make money if you put it into a book.
Yeah.
Convince people not to separate or divorce.
Well, that's not what I'm trying to, that's not what I'm trying to
I
do,
think
but-
it would.
But because I have so many kids at my job that like their parents were either not married and are separated, or they're divorced, and obviously they don't live together, and like we have so many behavioral issues, and like you can, it's obviously, I haven't researched it, but just from my experiences, like I can tell the parents that have issues and are more conflicted, and like it comes out in the children quite often. So I wanted to see if the connection I'm making at work is actually
Rooted in evidence.
yeah. Because like, I mean, I'm biased because like obviously I see them and like I can see how their parents react, and like I see the kid all day at school, and I'm just like, oh my god, like there's something going on here, you know. And like the kids that have like really good solid, like my co-teacher, for example, she separated with her baby daddy, and like they're an amazing co-parenting team, and their kid is awesome. So
Wow.
As far as your actual purpose statement and research questions go, I think it was really good. I think you really did a great job. You really kept it specific with like the age range, which I think is really important.
yeah.
And because that was the one thing when I was hearing you talk originally that got me a little nervous, but then when you early on
I
said
changed it completely.
preschool, and then sure enough in your research questions you address that too. I think that's super important. I think it looks really good personally.
Thank you.
I agree.
I just didn't know if it was the constructivist or pragmatic, because like, I mean, I was reading them, and I narrowed it down to those two, but I was unsure what it could be, as well as the narrative or phenomenological, because like my, I guess, thoughts, if I were to do this like research, you know, I would, you know, address the teachers. I mean, for the purpose of this class, I would be, you know, probably doing it at my job, but probably if I did another research, an actual like research, I would do, you know, multiple free schools. But I would ask teachers, and I would come up with like questions for them, and come up with questions for the parents, and maybe incorporate an observation of certain children, or maybe ask teachers to have observations, because I know children who have like so like an observer will come in and kind of fill out a questionnaire if a child is possibly has special needs or autism or whatever, and they also give like an observation paper to the teachers as well, and they would match them up, so something similar to that.
I just read worldviews, and I can't decipher which one it is either.
Yeah, it's hard.
That one might require a question to the professor, I think.
Well, I think also once you start actually doing your writing, you'll get a better idea of what direction it'll flow, right? Like, it's not like you have to say, I'm going to do this view and this is 100% where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
It'll be one of those, once you start having everything start flowing out of all your ideas and all your research, it'll naturally start gearing you towards one way or another, or at least start hinting more towards one or the other.
Yeah.
But I think you're on the right track.
What about the narrative or phenomenological? Do you guys, I mean, I read them, but I'm still like,
Okay, everybody had the same reaction.
okay, good. It's not just me.
Can you? Because the rest of us were like, "Oh."
Like I said,
I'll read more into that.
Yeah, and I would just focus on just doing
How
the writing.
cheap for that one?
I would just focus more on doing the writing, and then just see how that comes along, and then whatever naturally comes will naturally come. It's just usually people's writings will go and branch off into one of those areas. And
I'm just confused about like the actual terms. So.
Right.
I'll read more on it. Just wanted to get your guys' thoughts. But thank you.
Narrative, I thought, was a lot of like interviewing and like recording like the like interview and like transcribing.
Yeah. That's what I thought too, but like that's why I pulled that one in as well, because like I'm going to do a lot of interviewing of teachers, of parents, stuff like that. Yeah, that's why I was like, maybe it could be that one too.
Yeah.
Jessica?
Oh, sorry. I was like, I remember. My mute was on. The phenomenological is like after a phenomenon, like I thought after like a tsunami or something like that. And like, then they go and like study people and see how they're reacting to it or whatever. I thought it was after an event, like a phenomenon.
Because I think our professor's paper, I swear his was phenomenological. And it was, because his is based on like online classes and how people like learn better. And so I was like, maybe it could be that yeah. Because it's like, you know, it has to do with like a group of people, and like after like, you know, it's like a specific like divorce or separated, and like, I don't know, I'll figure it out.
It's a more kind of more contemporary family style than what you would see traditionally with parenting, or like husband-wife duo or something like that. And you can talk about how parenting styles are changing just in general and how that's all.
I talked about that in like the initial part of my introduction, like divorce rates and stuff like that, and separate, like how it's becoming more common with, you know, divorce, and a lot of children experience their parents separating or divorced. So
Yeah.
but yeah, thank you.
All right, cool. Any other final thoughts for Katie? Awesome. I think we have Daniel next.
Yeah.
You want me to share the screen, Daniel?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
So I am sticking on the same general idea where I'm going for the restorative justice. And I'm kind of gearing away from just middle school. I'm just saying secondary academics. So that'd be middle school and high school. But still, it's very similar ideas. So that top portion is just my purpose statement. So the intent of the study is to explore the efficacy of a school-wide restorative justice program in a secondary setting. Specifically to understand the efficacy restorative justice has on student behavior and on the relationships of those on a secondary academic campus. The idea being that's not just student to student, that'd be student to staff, staff to staff, staff to student, etc. Restorative justice has many different definitions and components that help to explain the practice. Currently, we will focus on the idea of restorative justice as a response to misbehavior and as a way to facilitate healthy school climates. Restorative justice is a way to teach students about their behavior, how their behavior has widespread implications on others, and a way to build relationships amongst all stakeholders. The study aims to answer the following questions. The following four are my research questions. What is the efficacy of restorative justice on student behavior in a secondary academic setting? What effect does a school-wide restorative justice program have on relationships between students in the secondary academic setting? What effect does a school-wide restorative justice program have on relationships between students and staff in a secondary academic setting? And finally, what effect does a school-wide restorative justice program have on between the staff members in a secondary academic setting? So I'm just trying to look at how it builds relationships across the board, right? So it's not just between the students, not just how the students are reacting, but also between the staff members, between the students and the staff, because as you know, we learned in Professor Darling's class, you know, a lot of it is relationship building and a lot of listening and whatnot. So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. I just actually went to a training on it like last week, I think.
Very cool.
Just to hear my district's side of the point of view, but it was frustrating because I felt like I knew more just based off of our class with Professor Darling. I'm like, oh, well, you're missing this part of that effective
You're wrong.
statement. Yeah, like, no, his effective statement. I was like, well, I'm pretty sure that sounds like you're individualizing out the individual. So, you know, like, oh, well, yeah, I guess you're right. But anyway, sorry, back on topic. Yeah, so restorative justice, that's what I'm kind of leaning towards. And like I said, how effective it is on the student's behavior and on the relationships on campus.
Sounds amazing. Sounds
Can
very
I
clear-cut.
ask a question, Daniel? There's my son is in middle school, and the dean is very much he practices restorative justice.
Okay.
He misses the component between the school, the parents, and then the school setting.
Okay.
So your study very much focuses on the school, but I wonder how it may be missing the home setting.
Yeah.
So,
you know, that's very good. And that's very true. So for me, from what my experiences with, you know, schooling and whatnot. So I work in a very low socioeconomic area where trying to get parent involvement is very difficult. You call a parent 10 times, and then the next time you try to call them, their phone's dead. You know, so trying to get that parent involvement is very difficult. So for me, it's one of those things where like I attempt, but it's not something typically realistic. So it wasn't even in my frame of thoughts when I was formulating this, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Because yeah, like most of my parents, like, I think of my caseload of like 22 students I have right now, only 2 of the parents have an email. So like that's where like communication is between home and only one of the parents actually will like consistently I can trust to respond to any emails I send them. So that just like shows you the type of level, you know, So I agree. That's very important. But I'm just, from my lived experiences, that's why I just kind of focus just on the school setting of what we can control. Because, in the home setting, there is so many variables, especially in the families of the students I work with.
So
But no, you bring up very good points.
So is the idea that you would implement a restorative justice program and then study the effects of it afterwards?
Yes. 100%. And I'm hoping to move towards a mixed methods study. So the idea being with the quantitative quantitative data would be the actual like suspensions and, does it decrease over time, all that stuff. And the qualitative would be surveys that would be provided to the staff members and the students about how they feel about their school climate, the relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's really great, especially for the school setting that you're in. Yeah.
Helpful.
Yeah, we try to implement it, but it's very difficult with like current resources and stuff like that. But I think it has a great basis, and it can move the right way. So yeah, that's my stuff. If anybody wants to chime in anything else, if not, then we can jump on to the next person.
I really like how you organized your statement, because it's very clear that it's a study and the objective of the study is XYZ. So that made it very easy to understand.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, Miss Jessica, you're up.
So I originally wrote it as a purpose statement, and then I was trying to work it into my introduction. So that's why I was like, oh, wait, where did I kind of lost it within there. So hold on, let me pull mine up. There. See, because I added in parts of my introduction, and it's quantitative, and I don't know, in the examples in the book, it didn't necessarily show them as, the world with the worldviews. So, let's see. So I think I need to separate out more of the purpose part from the rest of it, but I'll just read the last paragraph. Despite evidence of early school start times negatively impacting the academic, psychological, physiological, and sociological lives of adolescents, many schools in California, and specifically San Diego, have chosen to continue starting middle schools and high schools well before the recommended start time. Later school start time has been found to be positively correlated with longer sleep periods of adolescence, while earlier school start time is correlated with shorter sleep periods. Inadequate sleep has been found to negatively impact school performance. The purpose of this study is to determine if school start times negatively affect academic performance of students as they enter and progress through adolescence, and explore the possibility that the earlier onset, see, I messed it up, and explore the possibility that earlier onset of puberty would lead girls to, I got it all messed up, would cause girls' scores to decline sooner. So you can get all the statistics for the schools, and you can see like what they got, in 4th grade, 3rd or 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. And you can compare, you can see how they're going up or down or going back and forth and whatnot. And Santee School District has half their schools start early and half their schools start late, and all of them are K through 8th. So you could compare the, incline or decline of schools based on start time. So yeah, but obviously I need to rework that more. So, the questions. Do test scores decline as puberty begins and continue to decline? If test scores decline, is there a difference in rates of decline between earlier and later starting schools? If test scores decline, is there a gender difference in test scores? Do girls begin to decline earlier? Is there a difference in test scores declining for low-income and higher-income students? So, yeah. And it's all based off of just straight statistics, because I can't really survey anyone, and I kind of hoped I would be able to do something with it for next semester.
Is the objective of your study to find out if it would be beneficial, more like you're trying to assess school start time and the effects that school start time has on academics and behavior?
Well, on academic, I'd rather do behavior, but I can get my hands on statistics where I are, school, this academic stuff versus I can't really do survey stuff.
You can go observe their behavior.
No, I can, but like I said, I could have done a mixed methods and I thought about that, but I was trying not to go too over broadly. Because there's enough stuff that I could assess with that I wanted to just keep it with straight academics. Well, I don't want to, but I feel I should.
Yeah, because if you try to do academics and behavior, if you think about all the different aspects of academics, does it affect their reading? Does it affect their writing? Does it affect their mathematic abilities? Does it affect their problem? There's just so many different ways you could go with it that I think focusing on one or the other would be really good, and you could just really just go in depth. So like you've already picked academics, roll with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I thought math because, there's this whole idea that girls, like, they don't think they can do good at math and they're not good at math. And it's like, it kind of correlates with about 5th grade when girls actually start puberty and then they start getting less sleep. And so then by the time boys catch up, and it's hard for them too, girls are like, oh, we suck compared to the boys. So that's kind of where I was going with this. But I'm also trying to be objective because aren't I supposed to be objective if it's a quantitative study?
And so you are focusing on girls,
Yeah, well,
more specifically.
I want to focus on girls, but if the statistics don't support it, then
It's kind of hard.
yeah. I guess I could do a study about proving myself wrong. So.
I read a lot of them actually when I was going through for my annotated bibliography, like, oh, we think this, this type of parenting causes this, and it turns out it didn't, or it had no effect. I was like, oh.
Well, another thing you have to remember is when you're looking at studies is a lot of the time they write it as a null hypothesis. So they're gonna write what they believe is gonna happen as the opposite of what they really believe.
And that's what I was kind of trying to go for, was to not indicate that I was, well, like I said, I was trying to be objective, not that.
Yeah.
One thing I would be careful about with the research questions is that I would tie them into more of a more formal format with the items you already mentioned with your purpose statement. So like I would think of it as if somebody read your research question by itself, they would still know what it's about.
Okay.
So like, for example, saying, do they think this? Well, who's they? So that's like when I did like, just paying back to like my thinking of why I wrote mine was, even though like I think 3 of my research questions were almost identical, same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, mine were too.
And
right.
yeah, Katie did the same thing. It was just change the who we're talking about, right? But that way, if you saw, like Katie's, for example, if you read her question by itself, you still have an idea of what that question's answering. Okay. But like I think a lot of the ideas behind your questions are really good. I would just try to like formalize them a little more,
right?
If that makes sense.
Well, no, and like you said, the standalone thing. It's like that's what, without the other couple paragraphs, it's like, that's why I had to explain stuff. Like you need those for the rest of it to sort of make sense. So I see what you're saying.
That's a great tip. Thank you for that. That makes sense. Cool.
So Julie, do you want to come back to you, or are you feeling good for now?
This was really helpful. Really, really helpful. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas of your research questions that you want to bounce off or anything?
Yeah, I think it's going to be similar to what we talked a little while ago, which is, are communities amenable to having police officers engage with marijuana? That's going to be one. And then the next question is, what type of policy, personnel, recruitment restriction is appropriate for police that engage with activities in marijuana? So restating the purpose of the research along with the audience, and just zoning in on where I want the audience to go, because my thing is transformative. I want change, and then maybe I'll put in a question about, do you value having police officers, and if so, would you be willing to change, willing to be flexible, something like that. Basically.
Maybe adding in there, like, what would make you feel more comfortable with it? I mean, I don't know. If there was a test that you could like test police officers to know if they're actually high while they're at work, I think that would make people be like, all right, fine.
I think it'd be interesting to find out people's like perspective of the difference between alcohol and marijuana, right? Because like we're fine with our police officers getting drunk on their own time, right?
Yeah,
Or
that's
they
true.
come to work and they're sober. Well,
Mhm.
what's the difference between that and marijuana, right? Like, I
Oh,
think that'd be, I
if
think,
it's on their own time, like,
yeah, exactly. So I think it's one of those where like those are two very similar thinking, comparable ideas. That could be another research question, based off of the idea of like that comparison. And I don't know how exactly to write that, but just something like that. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
and wouldn't that be kind of tricky? You're almost being transformative there because you're kind of like making them think about how is it really that different?
That's my intention.
Yeah.
That is truly my
Yeah.
intention because a lot of people see it that way. Like, what's the difference between a cigarette to marijuana?
right.
Alcohol, prescription medication.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing is just for everybody. I am on spring breaks this next week, so in theory, I have a little more time. So if you guys, because I know we have like a week and a half before we have to submit this. So if you guys want to just like shoot out to our group email, like any updates or anything, if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to look over it and let you guys know. I can't, and it's just my 2 cents. So I'm not saying like I know
well,
everything.
you have
I'm
experience.
not trying to imply that, but I'm just saying I have written one of these
Thank
before.
you.
Yeah.
So if you want, just and I don't want you to blame me if for some reason it doesn't go the right way.
Don't backpedal now. You offered.
But if you just want to get
Thank
my opinions on items, I'd be more than happy to let you guys know.
Thank
Do you mind if we take a couple minutes to talk about the framework of the intro that we're supposed to turn in?
No?
Basically, like the sample that he provided us, right? Except
It
without all the intense research.
Mine's a blob. It's a bunch of gobbledygook.
Yeah, it's like background, purpose, your purpose, your research question, and then your research statement, and then your research questions. Is that
So
the gist of what we're supposed
I tried to follow his as much as possible, where
But-
it's like you have like background information that kind of leads into like there's a gap in the research here, so that's why I'm doing it, and then you provide like some information about like maybe like terms and stuff like that that need to be defined and all that stuff. And
See, the thing that I'm confused about with that is that so when I was watching his, I don't know if you guys watched his lectures on the introduction stuff.
yeah,
It sounded like the end of the introduction, what he was explaining was the literature review, explaining past literature and the deficiencies of those literature. But then the whole second section that we're writing for the final assignment is a literature review.
yeah. So it's like, do we write like that chunk of the intro and then that's fine, and then we write the literature review after that?
So what I'm personally doing is I'm just doing a general introduction of introducing my topic. So like, for example, for mine, the restorative justice approach, right? So I talked about how schools historically have been zero tolerance policy. Like, you're caught with marijuana, you're suspended. Like, it's just boom, boom. Like, that's how it works, right? So that's why I kind of talked about how restorative justice came to play and why it's here and what's the need for it. And then I kind of talked about my purpose statement and then my research questions. And then I'm going to talk in my literature review about past literature, right? And then where is the gaps in it? So that's where I'm going with that. It very well could be completely wrong and completely off. But just based off of when I was reading the rubric, that's kind of what I got. But I could be completely wrong because, like I said, in his lecture video, he did say that should be done in the introduction. I'm just confused because it's also the literature review. It sounds the same thing.
Maybe like we could email him and be like, hey, like, does our when we turn it in next weekend? Because we're turning, it's the introduction, the research questions, and the purpose statement. Like, does the introduction that you want us to turn in with those other two involve the literature review, or do you want us to nix that and then wait and do like all the other stuff with it, and then the literature review is another assignment?
Because the literature review is like a 3-page assignment on its own.
I know. I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Right.
I work till 6. I cry with kids all day. Like, I don't know.
I'm guessing that'll just be part of the final assignment.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those where he wants us to hint at it maybe in the introduction, but
Yeah, because I have some like quotes from outside sources that relate, but like it's not like a whole literature. It's not a whole literature review.
right.
Really interesting.
I can email him.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. Thank you, Katie. That'd be great.
he's probably tired of me now. Keep bothering him.
Probably tired of all of
Not
us.
me.
Right. I'm sure we've all
Right.
emailed him at some point.
Yeah. Just bombard him. Please help us.
Right.
All right, guys. So we're still being recorded.
Sorry, Professor.
Well, now we'll know if he saw.
Right.
True. Bye.
He'll like, oh, that's the annoying group.
I know. That girl right there, she keeps emailing me. That's her face.
Face to the name. Yeah, exactly.
Great. Well, I think we're pretty much fulfilled here.
I think we hit all the bullet points.
All right, cool. So I'll post this tonight. I'll email you guys when it's all done.
Cool.
And hopefully it'll stay up this time.
Yes.
Which twice.
Submit it like 15 times. We're good.
All right, have fun at your softball game.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Have
Have
fun
fun at the
at
wedding.
Friday. Happy weekend.
Enjoy the wedding. Be safe.
Yes.
I got my nails done.
Yay! All
All right, guys. Have a
See you
good
guys.
night. Bye.